Hey, well, what's up, Colliders? Welcome back to The Collision. Daniel here, and Pixar Studios is flying back into movie theaters after stirring up some controversy earlier this year with Turning Red. Pixar now sets its sights to infinity and beyond, and also stirring up more controversy while it's at it. I've seen it, so let's talk about it. So like I said, much like I think the Turning Red movie, which is, there was just a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of controversy, especially coming at it as a Christian. Lightyear seems to fall into that same camp. I think this is definitely a movie that people are going to have opinions on, have some thoughts. Maybe not quite in the same way as we did for Turning Red, but there's definitely some stuff for Christians to be, I think, concerned about or aware of, or at least to engage with. And I think most, if you kind of follow pop culture and stuff, a lot of the kind of release discussion of this movie almost entirely centered around the kind of alleged same-sex kiss, which was supposed to be in this movie, and then they edited that out, and then all the backlash and the Florida bills and all that stuff happened, and kind of the pressure, and they caved and they put it back in. And so a lot of the conversation centered on that. I think having seen this movie, I think a lot of the post-release discussion will also center on that and sort of the LGBTQ stuff. And there's definitely stuff that to talk about with that. And we will talk about that in this review. But again, this is a review for Lightyear as a movie as a whole, not just that one moment, or not against Disney as a whole. So we'll get to that later in the show and in the content to consider. But as far as this sort of the movie itself, some of the stuff going on with it, it's kind of a weird movie. It's one that when the trailer's released, I think a lot of people were kind of confused. Like, what is this? How does this is Buzz Lightyear. We know Buzz Lightyear, but how does he connect to the wider Toy Story franchise? He's a different voice actor. He looks different. Kind of what is this movie? And essentially, the concept, the premise of this movie is that this is the movie that Andy in Toy Story watched in World, and sort of the toy from Toy Story. It was the toy that was made based on this movie. When I went and saw this movie, alone as a grown-up at an animated kids movie, they gave me this cool poster which I was carrying around. I felt really cool about that. But kind of summarizing the premise, Andy is watching this sort of in-world movie. In a sense, this is sort of like the Star Wars of the kind of the Toy Story universe, and it's an interesting concept. They do some kind of neat stuff with it. I think in practice, it's not quite as interesting as it sort of is in theory, because it's so kind of meta of a concept. It kind of lacks some of this sort of inventiveness and stuff that some of the other Pixar movies like Soul or Inside Out, or even Turning Red had. Beyond sort of the suit, the recognizable suit, and a couple like the mannerisms of Buzz himself. There's really not a whole lot to connect, Lightyear to Toy Story. There's not like tons of callbacks and stuff. There is, like Zurg is the bad guy, and so you get some of that, but you do kind of sacrifice some of just sort of the fresh kind of creative explosion of ideas that sometimes you get with Pixar movies. But on the flip side, I think what you do get is this a highly entertaining and well-crafted, this sort of space adventure movie. So I've complained, if you've been watching this channel for a while, I've sometimes I get kind of grumpy about these sort of movies. With my cartoons, I want them to be fun and entertaining. Sometimes I like a lot of the Pixar movies. I even like Turning Red a lot more than other Christians enjoyed that movie. But one of my kind of constant critiques is this, that I think that because the Pixar movies are so well done sometimes, that they kind of take themselves too seriously. They try and kind of explore a lot of way more mature and deeper themes, and be kind of more of like just like a legit sort of movie. That I think in the process, sometimes they sacrifice some of just that fun, entertaining. Hey, this is still a cartoon. This is a movie you take kids to. We need laughs. We need fun. And Lightyear is definitely doesn't fall victim to that same thing. This is a fun movie. It still has some of the Pixar, like the emotional beats and some of the deeper drama and stuff, but most of that actually comes in like the first third of the movie, and they're kind of wrestling with stuff. And really after that point, this is sort of morphs into a kind of a full-on space adventure, a lot of kind of thrilling scenes and excitement and fun, and even some twists that even as an adult, I entirely didn't see coming. So this is definitely a fun movie, and kind of an engaging movie. By no means, even if it is sort of dealing with some deeper themes, it's not slow or boring by any means. Probably the best part of this movie is the crew. Sort of Buzz, as he sort of on this mission to defeat the evil Zurg and his robot army and all that kind of stuff. He's sort of on his own. He has to kind of team up with a crew of junior cadets. You sort of have these three very interesting, kind of diverse collection of characters, and they're funny. They're all endearing. They all kind of bring kind of have their own unique charm. There isn't really like here's the serious one and here's the comic relief one, and they're all kind of funny. They're all entertaining, and a lot of the movie because sort of the main civilization is sort of blocked off by the robots, and most of the movie is just sort of centered around these sort of four, at least after the first third, these four characters and kind of their interaction and kind of the way that they learn to work together and trust them, and all that stuff I found highly enjoyable. But the standout definitely Socks. You sort of see him in the trailer, sort of the AI cat companion thing that made a lot of laughs in the trailer. He is just as funny as he was in the trailer. He is great. He really does steal the movie, kind of like Doug did in Up, the previous Pixar movie, where he's this funny, he's sort of this quirky character. And I think Lightyear is a funny movie, but not in a way that's just sort of forcing a bunch of gags or humor. The humor it always feels earned. It always kind of comes naturally from just the interactions of the characters, and not just sort of like, oh, we need a joke, we need to make kids laugh. So definitely more of like a mature humor, but not like a mature as like, this is for adults, here's a dirty innuendo joke, but just this funny, clever jokes. So definitely a funny movie. So as far as content to consider kind of on the surface, here we go. Here's where a lot of the discussion is going to center. So let's get the first couple out of the way, and then we'll get into to the meat of this thing. Profanity, there's no profanity. Violence, there's no violence other than like robots blowing up and some cartoon stuff. But sexuality, so that's where a lot of the discussion I think on this movie is going to center. Again, kind of Disney and Pixar they've been dipping their toes in sort of this like LGBTQ representation in other movies, like Onward had a kind of a veiled illusion, and there's been this sort of little pieces of it, but really Lightyear's the first one that I'm aware of, at least the first kind of mainstream one, where they take the full plunge into that, and it is never been more kind of overt or kind of upfront. And again, a lot of the discussion before the movie was kind of the idea that, this same-sex kiss, but really having seen the movie, it's more of a subplot than it is just like some like, almost like in the most recent Star Wars movie, where it's just sort of this moment that happened in the background. It's definitely a plot. So let's kind of get into this a little bit. In particular, there's kind of two scenes where they unpack this. The first one, again, sort of part of the premise of this movie is that Buzz, as he's trying to kind of get his marooned crew off this sort of abandoned planet, he's making these Lightyear jumps, and because time's different, he comes back and he can't, basically he misses about every 4 years for every day that he does this. So you start to see, the progression. All the people around him in his life are growing older and moving on with their life as he's doing this. So the first moment of this kind of the sexuality you see with him, and he notices his sort of female space ranger colleague that she has an engagement ring on, and he kind of stops and questions her about that, and she shares that she met a girl and that they're engaged in a same-sex relationship. And again, I know a lot of the actors sort of before this movie came out talked about how it was just very natural and organic, and it does not play that way. It plays very much like a forced attempt at representation. Very kind of almost stops the movie in its tracks to kind of have this moment, and they're talking and kind of in a normalizing a sense of, hey, this is such a beautiful thing. So that's sort of the first where they introduce sort of the same-sex relationship. The second part, which comes shortly after that, is kind of a montage. Again, it's kind of similar to the famous kind of growing old montage in Up, where he's doing all these jumps, and he kind of, the way that they track time for these jumps is every time he returns, he goes and visits his friend, and they kind of track the sort of the development of that same-sex relationship. And you see that the two of them kind of they're married, and then they're kind of getting older, and then they have a daughter, and ultimately kind of to the point where he comes and they're in the middle of celebrating their 40-year wedding anniversary, and that's the moment where you kind of get that same-sex kiss that's been much talked about, which really ends up just being a real quick, kind of a quick thing, and then it kind of follows the end of that relationship. So it's not just a quick moment. This is more of a subplot, and it is something that I think Christians are going to need to think through, especially parents, sort of what you do with this. I will say that as far as it is those two scenes that kind of that subplot is contained really entirely, other than one veiled reference later in the film, it's contained entirely to those two moments. It's not something that it kind of goes throughout the whole film. So I don't know, it might be something that parents, when it comes out on home video, maybe they skip through that, go get popcorn, or maybe they watch it and then just talk to their children about it, as I think this is going to be sort of some subplots and material that is going to become more and more prominent in these sort of films, and maybe that's something that parents need to talk about. So again, I'm not here to tell you how to approach that, but just let you know that that is definitely in there, and I think it's even more than I expected, so be aware of that. As far as kind of wider, just sort of themes, things going on kind of beneath the surface of this, obviously beyond some of like the LGBTQ stuff that could also be considered sort of a theme. I think there is some other stuff that Christians will have an easier time latching onto. I don't think this is quite as deep as some other Pixar movies as far as some of the themes, but I do think there is layers. There's stuff for younger viewers, there's stuff for older viewers. I think on the surface, sort of this for younger viewers, this is the theme of like cooperation, working together as a team. Buzz is kind of a lone wolf. He doesn't really trust people, especially young people or rookies. He wants to do it all on his own. He's kind of arrogant that way. And a lot of his sort of character arc or journey, I guess, is this sort of learning to trust the people around him, learning to trust these sort of these junior cadets' mistakes and all, that he's actually stronger with them than he is apart. I don't think the film necessarily always does a good job at showing that. Nothing the team actually does really justifies his need for, Buzz kind of still does everything himself. So I don't know if the film necessarily unpacks it as strongly as it could. But it's definitely a theme there that I think there is enough that that parents can talk with their kids, or kids can be inspired by, or even almost like a visual parable of like 1 Corinthians 12 with the church and the body. So there's definitely some stuff there. On a deeper level, one of the kind of the main themes that I do think was a little more deep, a little more meaningful, at least as an older viewer watching this thing, is that some of the theme of this is just sort of embracing the life that you've been given, the life before you, and not just sort of wasting life away, wishing you had a different life, wishing things were different. Most of the movie is kind of Buzz. He's obsessed with sort of fixing his mistake that led to his crew being stranded, and he's sort of, as he's trying to figure out hyperjump and figure out how to kind of save everyone. Meanwhile, everyone else's life's going on. They're all getting older. They're all having kind of a happy life. And some of his sort of realizations is that, hey, as he's trying to kind of save everyone's life, he's actually missing out on life happening all around him, that he should kind of embrace the life before him. And kind of some Bible verses that came to mind for that. Ecclesiastes 3:1, where there's a time for everything. There is, God designed things for seasons. Embrace the season you're in. And then also just James 4:14, look that up. Just sort of this, hey, don't just be looking towards tomorrow and the worries and everything happening, but life's short. Kind of focus on the moment. So I think whether you're young, whether you're old, there's definitely some themes here for Christians to kind of wrestle with. So kind of in the end, I don't think Lightyear is one of the best Pixar movies. I think probably it's maybe a mid-tier, lower-tier Pixar movie, but I think it is. It's a well-crafted space adventure that I think will appeal to younger viewers and older viewers. This would be a very easy recommendation for people to go see, other than the kind of LGBTQ plot in the first act that kind of casts like a big Zurg-sized shadow over the rest of the movie, and kind of makes it what would be, I think, just sort of a unifying, kind of enjoyable summer movie, makes it more controversial, makes it something that kind of dragged it into some more of the stuff going on. So I do think it is something that Christians are going to need to think through how to wrestle with, how to, some of these questions, whether they want to support it, whether they don't want to support it, or whether they want to support it and skip parts, or however you choose to watch it. I do think that there's a lot to enjoy in this movie, and it's unfortunate that it can't just be a full-on recommendation. But hey, let me know, especially if you've seen this movie. I encourage you though, I'm getting old, I'm getting tired. It's summer, things are crazy here. I don't have the patience for yelling and arguing and people being rude to each other in the comments. I'm happy to have a discussion on this. I think we should have a discussion on this. But whether let's keep it civil. Let's just talk about this. No need to add anger to the internet. But I do want to have a conversation. So if you see this movie, if you're curious, or if you have more questions about the movie or things in it, I'd be happy to answer those. I want to thank you guys for watching. If you haven't done so, subscribe to the channel, like this video, kind of just join with what we're doing here at The Collision. But stay safe, guys, and continue to collide with your world for Christ.